What would happen if the weakest outsider in a frozen kingdom could see the hidden monsters sleeping inside the people everyone despised? Ander arrived with no strength, no status, and one cheap lighter. Yet the first girl he saved carried S-rank potential beneath a lifetime of humiliation. By the time nobles and armies finally learned his name, the strange little team from a broken shack was already standing in the path of a prince. His name was Ander. Ander woke up suffocating. His face was buried in a girl's chest. When Ander pulled free, Ander saw a girl with dog ears and a tail staring at him with big brown eyes. Her name was Alina, a half-beast girl. She'd found him passed out in the snow and kept him warm with her body heat. Ander figured out pretty quick what happened. Ander got hit by a truck back in his world, and now Ander was in some fantasy world. Classic. The place Ander landed in was a freezing, broken-down shack with holes everywhere. Alina lived here alone, dirt poor, with barely any food. Just a rock-hard piece of black bread she offered him. Even though she was clearly starving herself before Ander could figure out his next move, 4 thugs kicked down the door. They claimed Alina's dead guardian owed them money and started threatening her. Ander could not just stand there, so Ander pulled out the only thing Ander had, a cheap plastic lighter from his pocket. When Ander flicked it on, they freaked out. In this world, making fire appear from nothing looked like magic to them. Ander told them it was a holy artifact and handed it over to make them leave. After they left, something clicked in his mind. An adventurer's handbook appeared in his head. It showed his stats. Basically garbage across the board, except Ander had a talent called Sharp Eye that lets him see people's hidden potential. When Ander looked at Alina, Ander almost lost it. Her combat potential was S rank, the highest tier. This shy, bullied girl was secretly a diamond in the rough. Ander grabbed her hands and asked her to join his adventurer team. Ander promised her food, shelter, and a life where nobody would push her around. She looked confused but hopeful, and her tail started wagging. She said yes, but right when Ander was celebrating, those same 4 thugs kicked the door open again, this time with weapons. They'd figured out the lighter was just a trick, and now they wanted everything Ander had. They surrounded them, and Ander pushed Alina behind him, thinking Ander just got the best starter companion ever, and Ander might already be dead. With 4 armed thugs closing in, Ander was desperately running through options in his head. Fighting was suicide. Ander was basically useless in a fight. Talking his way out wasn't going to work either, not with those greedy looks in their eyes. And Alina was shaking like a leaf behind him. So Ander started stalling, planning to use his handbook to give Alina a new ability and turn things around. But before Ander could act, a booming woman's voice thundered from outside. "Stop right there!" The thugs froze instantly. Then their faces completely changed. Their eyes literally turned into heart shapes, and they started falling over themselves with compliments, rushing outside like lovesick puppies. Ander poked his head out to see this Miss Nana. They were fawning over, and his jaw hit the floor. She was a nearly 2 meters tall, green-skinned orc woman built like a tank with tusks and arms thicker than his legs. But the thugs were treating her like a supermodel. That's when it hit him. Beauty standards in this world are completely backwards. Alina, who Ander thought was cute, was considered ugly here, and this hulking orc lady was their idea of gorgeous. His sharp eye ability showed him her stats. Natasha Smash Fist combat potential B rank. The handbook even suggested recruiting her. After Natasha scared the thugs away and left, Ander quickly opened the handbook to customize Alina's class. The options were Berserker High Compatibility, Fist Fighter Medium, or Bard Low. Ander picked Berserker without hesitation. It matched her S-rank combat instinct perfectly. The moment Ander confirmed, Alina shivered and something wild stirred inside her. She gained 2 skills, Tracking and Berserk Mode, which temporarily boosts all her physical stats, but leaves her drained afterward. Then, of course, those stubborn thugs kicked the door down again. But this time Ander was ready. Ander pointed at them and yelled, "Alina, go berserk! Bite them!" Something snapped inside her. Her eyes went blood red. She let out an inhuman howl, and she tore through all 4 of them in under 10 seconds. One got bitten through his coat to the bone. Another got punched across the room. A third was kicked into a wall. The leader took a headbutt to the chest and went down hard. It was incredible until Ander realized she'd run out of enemies and was now staring at him with those red eyes. Ander screamed, Ander was on your side. Ander was the one who feeds you. And thankfully the berserk wore off. She collapsed from exhaustion, completely confused about what just happened. Once she was safely resting, Ander got to work. Ander took his lighter back from the leader's pocket, then stripped all 4 thugs of their warm coats and pants, calling it compensation for emotional damages and property destruction. Ander picked the cleanest set and put it on. After hours of nearly freezing to death, that warmth almost made him cry. The 4 thugs crawled away into the snow. Good riddance. His adventurer's handbook rewarded him for the whole encounter, rated it B rank, and gave him 2 stat points. Ander put 1 into strength and 1 into toughness. Alina's combat instinct also jumped to 5%, and Ander gave her bonus point to strength. With the copper coins Ander looted from the thugs' pockets, Ander sent Alina out to buy food. She came back with rock-hard black bread and some ugly root vegetables, then cooked them into a gray paste using a cracked pot over their tiny fire pit. No salt, no oil, nothing. It tasted like spoiled glue mixed with dirt. But she looked so proud of herself that Ander gave her a thumbs up and choked it all down. That night was brutal. Even with the stolen coats, Ander was freezing. Alina quietly scooted over and hugged him from behind to keep him warm. That's when an idea hit him, his lighter. In a world where people need flint and tinder to make fire, a one-click lighter could be worth real money. Next morning, they went into town. The whole way there, people stared at Alina with open disgust, whispering insults and avoiding them like they carried a disease. She shrank smaller with every step. Ander could not take it, so Ander grabbed her hand and told her straight. She was special, her ears were cute, her eyes were bright, and she was one of a kind. She started crying happy tears, her tail wagging so fast it was almost a blur. At the general store, Ander put on his best smooth talker act and sold the lighter as a miniature flame storage device from the mysterious East. The shopkeeper tried lowballing him, but between his sales pitch and his natural charm, Ander got 30 silver coins for it. Then they went shopping. Food first, fresh bread, smoked meat, turnips, charcoal, and even salt. Then Ander took Alina to the blacksmith and bought her a used leather armor, set a helmet, and an iron sword. For himself, Ander just got a wooden shield and a short spear. Ander was not the fighting type. His job was to stand in the back and give orders. Back at the shack, Ander cooked dinner himself. Smoked meat stew with turnips and bread. When Alina tasted it, she nearly cried again. She said it was the most delicious thing she'd ever eaten. The hunger debuff on her stats disappeared after that meal. After eating, they patched up the shack, mixed clay and straw to fill the wall cracks, gathered branches and dry grass to fix the roof. It was rough work, but by nighttime the wind wasn't blowing straight through anymore. Alina sat there looking genuinely happy for what seemed like the first time in her life. Warm shelter, real food. Someone who cared about her. Then she crawled over next to him, face flushed tail resting on his leg, and softly asked if Ander was still cold. His brain was screaming that she's his teammate and Ander should not cross any lines, but his mouth said, yeah, still a little cold, didn't matter. Before Ander even finished the sentence, she was already fast asleep, snoring away. Ander woke up with Alina curled up in his arms, drooling a little and nuzzling his chin in her sleep. Cute, but Ander had to focus. Training came first. Ander got her up early and started what Ander called scientific training. Really, it was just the radio calisthenics Ander had done every morning at school back in his old world. Stretches, arm swings, leg kicks. Alina followed along looking like a confused duck flapping its wings. But they both warmed up, so it worked. Then they ran laps around the shack. She jogged easily while Ander nearly died from his garbage stamina. Afternoons were weapon practice. Ander gave Alina her new sword and told her to swing it 1,000 times. Her first swing was so wild she spun in a circle and almost launched herself, but she kept at it. Meanwhile, Ander practiced with his shield and spear badly. Ander was starting to accept that his role was strictly stand in the back and yell commands. Ander wanted a ranged option, so Ander made a sling out of rope and scrap leather. His memory was fuzzy, but his S-rank talent, sharp memory, kicked in, and Ander actually unlocked a new skill item, crafting F rank. His first throw nearly hit his own foot, but hey, progress. Then Ander got the idea to make medicine. Alina's scavenging skills came through. She dug up some pain-killing grass and anti-swelling moss from the snow. His sharp memory triggered again and Ander unlocked Herbalism F rank. Ander mashed the herbs with animal fat and made a crude healing salve. The handbook called it barely effective, possibly just a placebo. When Alina tried it, she said it actually stung more. Ander told her that meant it was working. But Ander saw business potential. The ingredients were basically free. So Ander bought cheap gourd containers, filled them with salve, and started selling in town at 10 copper each. People were rude, called him a scammer, told him to get lost. But Ander was from the internet age. His skin was thicker than castle walls. Ander sweet-talked, joked, and guilt-tripped until a few people bought some. Profit was tiny, about 5 copper per jar. But a few days later, an old miner came back saying his shoulder actually felt better. Word of mouth, baby. His daily routine settled into a pattern. Mornings were exercise and salve making. Afternoons were Alina's sword training and his pitiful combat practice. Evenings were selling salve in town. Slowly, copper coins started adding up. After several days of training and proper meals, Alina's stats recovered fully. No more hunger or malnutrition penalties. She even unlocked Swordsmanship F rank, and her combat instinct rose to 8%. She was getting stronger every day. As for Ander picked up 2 crafting skills but was still hopeless in a fight. That's fine. A good chief executive does not need to swing a sword. Just manage talent. Looking at everything. Alina training hard in the winter sun, the little bag of coins growing the shack slowly becoming a real home. Ander felt genuinely proud. Life in this world was finally looking up. Then Ander dropped a sling stone on his own toe and spent the next minute hopping around in pain. Alina stopped her sword. Practice tilted her head and asked with barely hidden amusement, "Are you okay? Want him to put some salve on it?" Things were going well for a while. Alina's sword skills were improving. She could swing 2,000 times a day without breaking a sweat, and her combat instinct hit 10%. His herbalism leveled up, which meant his salves actually started working a little. An old miner became his loyal customer and spread the word. So sales slowly picked up. They were not rich, but they could eat properly and even afford meat sometimes. Natasha, the orc woman, visited a couple times to check on Alina. She was impressed that Alina had beaten those 4 thugs, and even gave her some fighting tips. She kept giving Ander that interesting man look that made his skin crawl. Then one morning, everything fell apart. The town sheriff, Hank, showed up at their door with 4 armed guards. He told Ander was a suspect in a murder case. The shopkeeper's wife, the same woman Ander had sold his lighter to, had been found dead in her store last night. Her husband, Old John, was accusing him of killing her. His story was insane. He claimed Ander had been attracted to his wife, snuck into the shop at night to force himself on her, and killed her when she refused. The evidence was his lighter found at the crime scene with blood on it. Ander nearly choked. Ander attracted to that middle-aged shopkeeper. The accusation was beyond ridiculous, but the lighter being there was a serious problem. Ander convinced the sheriff to let him go to the scene and confront his accuser face-to-face instead of being hauled straight to jail. He agreed. Ander thought even he found the story hard to believe. At the shop, Old John was in hysterics, screaming for him to be hanged. Then right on cue, the garlic-nosed thug from before limped out of the crowd to testify that the lighter was definitely his. Ander stayed calm and pointed out the obvious. Yes, the lighter used to be his, but Ander sold it to the dead woman for 30 silver coins over 10 days ago. It being at the scene proved it was her property, not that Ander had been there. Old John screamed that his wife would never spend 30 silver on such a thing, and that he'd never heard of the purchase. That struck Ander as very suspicious. 30 silver is a lot of money. How could a husband not know about it? Something was off about this whole setup. Old John's reaction felt rehearsed, and the thug showing up as a witness was too convenient. Ander was being framed, and the real question was who actually killed that woman and why Ander had been chosen as the scapegoat. Ander needed to figure out the answer fast. With a murder charge about to land on his head, his brain kicked into overdrive. Every detective show Ander had ever watched started flooding back. Kid Detective's crime drama's the works. Anders started by asking the sheriff some questions. The shopkeeper's wife had been stabbed in the chest, and her expression showed anger and surprise like she recognized her killer and could not believe what was happening. That was his first clue. Then Ander asked old John if any money was missing from the shop. He stuttered and said no. Ander jumped on that immediately. If Ander was supposedly there to rob or attack her, why would Ander leave without taking anything? And why would Ander go home and wait to be arrested? The sheriff started rubbing his chin. Even he could see that made no sense. Then came old John's ridiculous claim that Ander was attracted to his wife. This was where Ander pulled his most shameless move ever. Ander grabbed Alina, held her by the shoulders in front of the whole crowd, and launched into a passionate speech about how her ears were perfection, her tail was magnificent, and her beauty was beyond anything these ordinary people could understand. Ander declared that a man with taste as refined and unique as his would never look twice at a conventional woman like the shopkeeper's wife. The crazy thing, it actually worked. The townspeople started nodding along. Yeah, if he's into the dog girl, he probably would not go after the shopkeeper's wife. Even the sheriff agreed his unusual taste was actually evidence in his favor. Alina turned bright red but looked thrilled. Old John started panicking. That's when Ander switched to gathering information. Ander asked the crowd if anyone had noticed anything strange about old John lately. A woman with a basket immediately piped up. She'd seen him hanging around with gamblers, including Garlic Nose and his gang. That was the missing piece. Ander pointed straight at old John and channeled his inner kid detective. The truth is only one. You're the real killer. Ander laid out the whole theory. Old John got deep into gambling debt. He tried to steal money or the lighter from the shop to cover his losses. His wife caught him. They fought, and he killed her in a rage. That's why her face showed surprise. She never expected her own husband to do it. Then he and Garlic Nose cooked up a plan to frame Ander the outsider with no connections. Old John collapsed on the spot, crying and confessing everything. The sheriff's face went dark, and he ordered both Old John and Garlic Nose arrested on the spot. The whole crowd stared at Ander like Ander performed a miracle. The guy they'd looked down on, the weird outsider living with the ugly dog girl, had just solved a murder case in minutes. Walking home, Alina stuck close to his side, looking at him with stars in her eyes. She whispered that Ander was amazing, her tail gently brushing his arm. Ander stroked his chin like a seasoned detective and said it was just basic stuff. No big deal. The handbook rewarded him again for solving the murder. 2 more stat points, which Ander dumped into strength and toughness as usual. Best part was learning that brain work counts too, not just fighting. That suited him perfectly. After the case, life got really good. Ander stopped wasting time exercising and focused entirely on his medicine business. His herbalism hit E rank and sales took off. Even people from nearby villages came to buy his salves. Income went from a few dozen coppers a day to a steady 1 or 2 silver coins, enough to match a carpenter's wage. Ander upgraded everything. Better food meat every day. A big clay pot permanently simmering bone broth, with chunks of meat and vegetables on the fire. Alina could eat hot soup the second she finished training. Ander hired a carpenter to properly fix up the shack with a real door. No more freezing at night. Alina was thriving. Her swordsmanship climbed, and her combat instinct hit 15%, while all her base stats improved significantly thanks to proper nutrition and daily training. His own skills progressed too. Herbalism and item crafting continued rising. But then Ander hit a wall. A better skill with only 1 recipe was useless. Ander needed new formulas and better ingredients. Ander visited the town's herbalist, hoping to learn from him. He basically told Ander to get lost. He only takes local kids as apprentices, not weird outsiders who hang around with beast girls. So much for that. The herb supply around town was drying up too. Ander was stuck in a rut, complaining about it out loud when Alina spoke up. She knew a place, the Black Forest west of town. She'd snuck in there once when she was starving and found glowing plants that looked valuable. But it was dangerous. She'd nearly been caught by a giant wolf. That was all Ander needed to hear. Glowing herbs in a dangerous forest. That's real adventuring. Time to stop playing shopkeeper and actually go on a quest. Alina's training needed a real test. Ander checked their stats. Alina's numbers looked solid. Strength 10, Agility 8, Toughness 9, with multiple combat skills. Ander was still mostly useless in a fight, but Ander had gotten a bit tougher, good enough for a support role. Ander ran to the secondhand shop and bought himself leather armor, a helmet, and 2 small daggers. Ander used his crafting skill to sew sheepskin lining inside both their helmets for warmth. Alina wagged her tail when she tried hers on. They packaged dried meat, bread, and water, checked all their weapons, and got ready. The next morning at dawn, they geared up and headed west toward the Black Forest, half hidden in fog at the edge of town. Alina looked nervous but excited, gripping her sword tight. Ander looked at his little wooden shield and silently prayed. Just give them something Alina can fight that's worth good money. That's all Ander asked. The Black Forest looked like a giant dark beast crouching in the snow. They could hear wolves howling and strange creatures screaming deep inside. Ander tightened his armor, grabbed his shield, and told Alina to stay close, then realized Ander was the support, not the fighter. So they swapped positions and she took the lead. Not far in, Alina's ears perked up. A horned rabbit, white as snow but the size of a fat cat with a sharp black horn on its head, burst from a snowbank and charged straight at her. Before Ander could even shout a warning, she sidestepped and cut it clean in half with one swing. Her swordsmanship was no joke. Ander skinned it on the spot. Good meat for soup, and that horn could be crafted into a decent blade. While searching for herbs, Ander got lucky with his sling and knocked a fat bird thing off a branch. Near where it fell, Ander spotted some black mushrooms with white spots growing in a dead tree's roots. Alina warned him they were poisonous, but his sharp memory skill identified them as fly cap mushrooms, a natural paralysis agent that breaks down with heat. Perfect for coating weapons. Ander squeezed the juice onto Alina's sword and his spear tip. Improvised poison weapons. They never found those glowing herbs Alina mentioned. And as the sun started dropping, Ander called it. Too dangerous to stay after dark. They headed back. That's when it appeared. A winter wolf the size of a small cow burst from the bushes, blocking their path. Gray-white fur, exposed fangs, eyes full of hunger, Alina charged it head-on. Her sword clashed against its claws with a metallic screech, and she was pushed back half a step, but she drew first blood, a cut on its paw. The wolf went berserk and changed targets, lunging at Ander instead. Ander threw his shield up just in time. The impact nearly knocked him off his feet. His arms went numb, but right as it swung again, the wolf froze for a split second. The mushroom poison on his shield had kicked in. That tiny opening was all Alina needed. She drove her sword into its side. The fight turned into a brutal back and forth. The wolf clawed open gashes in Alina's armor. Ander played distraction, getting battered around while sneaking in jabs with his poison spear whenever Ander could. Each hit stacked more paralysis. The wolf got slower and slower. Finally, after dodging one more lunge, the wolf stumbled from the paralysis and left its neck wide open. Alina raised her sword with both hands and brought it down with everything she had. The blade nearly took its head off. Hot blood sprayed across the white snow as the beast crashed down and stopped moving. Ander collapsed in the snow, completely spent. Alina leaned on her sword, panting hard, but with eyes shining bright. The handbook rated C rank noted their teamwork was rough, but praised the clever use of poison. Ander got 1 stat point, put it in agility, and learned a new skill, Shield Bash F rank. Alina's combat instinct jumped to 25%, and Ander gave her bonus point to toughness, bringing it to 10. Ander asked if she'd been scared. She said yes, but that being with him made her not afraid of anything. That actually made Ander smile for real. They dragged the massive wolf carcass home in the sunset. 1 horned rabbit, 1 fat bird, a pile of poison mushrooms, a wolf pelt, and 2 very tired adventurers. Not bad for day 1. They dragged the massive winter wolf back home after dark, completely exhausted. Ander had Alina hanged it from a tree outside and drained the blood, while Ander threw together a quick rabbit stew from today's catch. The soup turned out surprisingly decent. The wild fruits added a nice tartness to the meat. They ate, collapsed onto their hay beds, and passed out instantly. Next morning, Ander got them up early. They tied the wolf to 2 poles and carried it into town like a parade float. As expected, they caused a scene. People crowded around, staring and whispering. Most of them were convinced they must have found a dead wolf rather than actually killed one. Ander was not going to let that slide. Ander told Alina to show them what she could do. She drew her sword and performed a demonstration right there in the street. Slashing, thrusting, spinning the blade with real speed and power, she finished with a precise downward strike that stopped perfectly in midair. The crowd went dead silent. Nobody was calling them scavengers anymore. Then Sheriff Hank showed up, examined the wolf's wounds, and confirmed the kill was legitimate. He even complimented them. His approval shut down all the doubters instantly. Ander started the auction on the spot. The tanner wanted this pelt, complained about the spear holes, but still paid 8 silver. A craftsman bought all the teeth and claws for 10 silver. The butcher took the meat for 12 silver, 30 silver coins total. His money pouch felt so heavy and satisfying, Ander almost fainted from happiness. With cash in hand, Ander grabbed Alina and went on a shopping spree. First stop the general store, now under new management after the murder case. Ander bought a packet of mixed dried herbs for cooking. After weeks of nothing but salt for seasoning, this felt like buying luxury spices. Then Ander picked up a big chunk of fresh lamb marbled with fat. Ander held up the meat and made his announcement. Tonight they were not having stew. Tonight they were having grilled lamb skewers. Alina had no idea what that meant, but the words lamb and grilled were enough. Her eyes lit up like stars and her tail went into overdrive. She could barely keep from drooling. Ander could not wait to get home, build a fire, and show this world what real cooking from his homeland looked like. Back home, Ander made good on his promise. Ander cut the lamb into chunks, skewered them on sharpened sticks, crushed the dried herbs with salt into a simple seasoning mix, and grilled everything over the fire pit. When the fat started dripping onto the coals and that sizzling, smoky aroma filled the room, Alina's tail was wagging so fast it was practically a blur. She bit into the first skewer, burned her tongue, but refused to spit it out. Her eyes went wide, and she made these happy little whimpering sounds. She tore through skewer after skewer, face covered in grease, completely lost in the experience. It wasn't perfect. No chili flakes or cumin, which would have made it truly great. But for this frozen world, it was heaven. After they stuffed themselves, Ander gave Alina the day off. She tried to refuse, saying she wanted to keep training to protect him, but Ander pulled rank. Ander handed her a silver coin as spending money and told her to go find her friends and treat them to something nice. She held that coin like it was the most precious thing in the world, thanked him quietly, and headed out into the snow, looking back at him 3 times before disappearing. Once she was gone, Ander sat by the fire and thought seriously about her future. Life was comfortable now. Warm shelter, decent food, a growing medicine business. But comfortable wasn't enough. Real adventuring paid way better. One wolf earned them 30 silver. That's weeks of selling salves. The math was obvious. Keep the medicine business a steady income, but shift their focus to hunting and exploring. Ander spent the rest of the morning cranking out 30 jars of improved salve. His upgraded skills cut the work time in half. Then Ander headed to town, dropped off their damaged armor at the tanner for repairs, sold all 30 jars quickly, and counted his total savings. 37 silver and 50 copper. Straight to the blacksmith. His old wooden shield was falling apart after the wolf fight. So Ander bought a proper new one. A round shield with layered wood construction, an iron rim, and a metal boss in the center. Heavy but solid, 12 silver. Then Ander spotted a quality oak spear with a real steel head and blood grooves. 5 silver. Both were expensive, but after getting knocked around by that wolf, Ander was not cutting corners on survival gear anymore. His money pouch was significantly lighter walking out, but Ander felt a lot more confident. New shield on his back, new spear in hand, Ander headed home to wait for Alina. The Black Forest was calling, and this time they'd be better prepared. Ander was not there for what happened next. This is what Alina told him later. She took the silver coin Ander gave her and went to visit Natasha first. The big orc woman was impressed about the wolf hunt and started asking a lot of questions about Ander, where Ander came from, what Ander liked to do, what kind of person Ander was. Alina answered honestly, but she said something about it made her uncomfortable. She described it like watching someone eye your favorite bone. She could not explain why, but she suddenly wanted to leave. So she bolted out of Natasha's place without even staying for the meal she'd planned to treat her to. Her second stop was to find Sarah, a cat-eared half-beast girl. Sarah was basically the only other person Alina could call a friend. They used to scavenge together in the garbage areas. But unlike Alina's timid personality, Sarah was all claws and fire. She'd fight anyone who insulted her, no matter the odds, which made her even more hated than Alina in town. Alina hadn't seen her since Ander came along, so she went looking. Before she even found her, she heard shouting. Two big townsmen had Sarah pinned, accusing her of stealing smoked meat from a kitchen window. Sarah was screaming that she'd found it in the snow below the window, that it must have fallen out. Nobody believed her. The crowd just watched and made nasty comments about half-beasts being thieves. Alina said something changed inside her in that moment. She remembered what Ander told her, that she was special, that she should not listen to people who could not see her worth. She felt the silver coin warm against her chest. Ander had given her that money to make her friends happy, and now the closest thing she had to a friend was being dragged away. For the first time in her life, Alina did not freeze up. She did not hide. She pushed through the crowd, clenched her fists, and screamed at the top of her lungs. "Stop!" When she told Ander about it later, Ander had to admit Ander was proud of her. That wasn't the scared girl Ander had found shivering in a broken shack. Something in her was really changing. Ander was sitting by the fire counting his coins when Alina burst through the door in a panic, dragging a scrawny cat-eared girl behind her. The girl had black fur ears, green cat eyes, and a puffed-up black tail. She looked like a cornered stray. Alina was nearly crying as she explained. Her friend Sarah, a cat half-beast, had been accused of stealing meat from a window. Two men grabbed her, and when Alina tried to intervene, they shoved her and said horrible things that triggered something in her. She drew her sword and cut one of them, just a scratch on the arm but still a weapon on a civilian. Before Ander could even process this, Sheriff Hank was at his door. Ander went into full damage control mode. Ander argued that those men had no authority to grab anyone. That's the sheriff's job. They shoved Alina first, making her response self-defense, and if Alina had truly meant harm, she could have done far worse. The sheriff had seen what she did to that wolf. Ander framed the whole thing as Alina bravely standing up against bullies and gave Hank credit for being the kind of fair leader who'd see through this. Hank grumbled about his twisted logic but let it slide since the injury was minor. He told Ander to keep Alina's weapons sheathed in town. Ander agreed enthusiastically and privately told Alina that next time she should use her fists instead of a blade. Hitting someone is a scuffle, but drawing a weapon makes it a crime. Meanwhile, Ander had already used his sharp eye on Sarah. What Ander saw made his heart race. A rank combat potential and a stealth potential. A natural-born rogue and scout. This starving stray cat was another hidden gem. Sarah tried to leave, but Ander stopped her. Ander offered her hot soup. The smell alone froze her in place. She hadn't had a warm meal in who knows how long. She sat down and demolished a whole bowl in seconds, making little purring sounds without realizing it. Ander casually suggested she stay with them. She almost refused on instinct. She was used to being alone, trusting nobody. But then Alina spoke up with genuine warmth, telling Sarah that Ander was a good person who could help her. Sarah looked at Alina's sincere face, then at Ander, then at the warm fire and the remains of a real meal. After a long silence, she whispered the tiniest okay. 3 residents now lived in this little shack. His handbook rated the whole episode C rank and gave him another stat point, which Ander put into toughness. More importantly, Ander now had a potential second team member, a stealth specialist, to complement Alina's berserker power. Ander also noticed something interesting. When Ander had looked at Sarah earlier, Alina had gotten slightly tense watching him carefully. Between that and how she'd run away from Natasha's questions about him, Ander was starting to think his dog-eared partner might be developing some territorial instincts that went beyond just teamwork. First priority was making Sarah feel welcome. Ander dug out one of the thick coats Ander had taken from the thugs way back and gave it to her. It was huge on her. She had to roll the sleeves up several times, but it was warm. Then Ander had Alina help him rearrange the shack to clear a sleeping spot near the fire. The space was tight, so Ander ran back to town and bought a straw mat and 2 sheepskin blankets. 8 silver for those blankets alone. Days of salve profits gone in one purchase. But you cannot recruit someone by letting them freeze to death. Ander gave the girls the new bedding and the warmer spot and moved himself to the old pile of hay and furs. Alina looked confused and a little hurt, that Ander was not sleeping next to her anymore. But with a third person in the house sharing a bed just wasn't appropriate. Sarah noticed Ander had given them the better spot. Ander caught something shift in those green cat eyes, surprise, maybe even a hint of being touched. Sarah barely slept that first night. She just lay there staring at him from under her blanket. Ander thought she was waiting for the catch. For the moment, this all turned out to be a trick. Next morning, Ander made a proper breakfast, reheated the bird soup with smoked meat and vegetables, and steamed the hard bread until it softened. Sarah stared at her bowl like she could not believe it was real. While she ate, Ander told her plainly if she wanted to stop being pushed around, she should train with Alina. She whispered that she was weak. Ander pointed at Alina stuffing her face and said she used to be weak too. Now she kills wolves. That got through to her. Training was eye-opening. Alina played senior student and taught Sarah the morning exercises. Sarah picked up the movements almost instantly where Alina had flopped around like a duck. Sarah was fluid and graceful right away. Cat tribe agility was the real deal. Her stamina was terrible, though. She could barely finish a few laps before going pale. Nothing that food and practice would not fix. While the girls trained, Ander grabbed an axe and started chopping small trees. Not for firewood. Wet winter wood would just make smoke. Ander needed lumber to build bed frames. Without Alina's body heat at night, sleeping on the ground was killing his back. Using his crafting skill and sheer stubbornness, Ander hammered together 2 rough but sturdy bed frames by the end of the day. His hands had blisters, but sleeping off the cold ground was worth every blister. To celebrate, Ander bought more lamb and grilled skewers for everyone. They sat around the fire eating, and Ander watched Sarah slowly relax. She was still eating fast old survival habits, but her shoulders were not so tense anymore, and she kept sneaking glances at him with those green eyes. The fear and distrust were fading. Things were coming together. Ander had a berserker and a future rogue under one roof. A dog and a cat, both with incredible potential. Life was good. Ander put the Black Forest expedition on hold to focus on bringing Sarah into the team properly. The plan was simple. Feed her, train her, earn her trust. With winter getting worse, herbs for his salve business were harder to find. Ander assigned Alina to herb gathering duty. Her B-rank scavenging skill made her a natural. She'd head out every morning with a basket and somehow always came back with enough. Afternoon, she continued sword training. Meanwhile, Ander started Sarah on basic fitness, the same school exercises Ander taught Alina. Sarah's flexibility and balance were incredible, like a real cat, but her strength and stamina were way behind Alina's. No rush, though. After several days of warm meals, safe shelter, and patient training, Sarah's walls finally started coming down. One afternoon, she quietly said thank you when Ander handed her soup. That was his signal. That evening, Ander formally asked her to join the team. She looked at him, then at Alina, who was nodding enthusiastically beside her. After a pause, she said yes. Ander activated the handbook and her profile appeared. Her stats confirmed what Ander had hoped. Agility at 12, way higher than anyone else. Plus that stealth talent already at 10% awakening. The job options were impressive too. 6 choices compared to Alina's 3. 2 had extremely high compatibility: thief and ranger. Ander picked ranger. They needed a ranged fighter badly. His sling was a joke, and the ranger's wilderness survival and scouting abilities were perfect for forest expeditions. The moment Ander confirmed, Sarah gasped as power flowed into her. She gained 3 skills instantly: scouting C, precision aiming D, and fencing F. The AA potential was paying off already. For equipment, Ander could not afford heavy armor, and it would slow her down anyway, so Ander got creative. Ander took the thug's old coats, had Alina pound the stuffing tight, and sewed beast hide over the chest. A makeshift padded armor, light, warm, and decent enough protection. The process even leveled his item crafting. Then came the expensive part. Ander bought her a hunting bow for 10 silver and a quiver of arrows. His wallet cried, but when Sarah tried the bow with her precision aiming skill, every single arrow hit the target on her very first attempt. Not all center shots, but 0 misses. Ander thought about his own sling accuracy and wanted to cry for different reasons. Alina's ears drooped watching this, clearly feeling threatened. Ander quickly patted her head and reminded her she's the frontline warrior who took down a winter wolf. Completely different role, and she was still the most special. Later, her tail was spinning again, and she was shooting smug looks at Sarah. Ander also crafted a short sword from the horned rabbit's horn as Sarah's backup weapon. She tried a few moves using her new fencing skill, clumsy but functional. Ander told her to focus on archery first. Then Ander coached her shooting form, correcting her stance and grip, based on videos Ander vaguely remembered. This required some hands-on adjustment, which turned Sarah's ears bright red. Meanwhile, Alina stood nearby, pouting hard enough to hang a bucket from her lip. Through the awkwardness, Sarah unlocked Archery F rank basic, but proper technique at last. Looking at his team, a berserker with S rank potential and a ranger with AA potential, Ander felt like things were really coming together. The Black Forest was waiting, and this time they'd be going in as a proper 3-person squad. His salve business hit a wall. The town was small. People were not getting hurt as often in winter, and sales dropped hard. Meanwhile, Ander had 2 teammates who ate like bottomless pits. Alina trained harder every day and ate accordingly. Sarah was making up for years of starvation. Money was flowing out with nothing coming in. Time to go back to the Black Forest. They headed out at dawn. Ander with his round shield and new spear, Alina with her sword, and Sarah in her custom-padded armor with her hunting bow. On the way in, they ran into some local hunters who warned them about an iron-backed boar in the western woods. Ander filed that away for later. Ander coated everyone's weapons with his mushroom paralysis poison. Then they set formation, Sarah on point as their scout, Ander in the middle, Alina guarding the rear. Sarah's scouting skill was a game-changer. She spotted a fat forest pheasant hiding in bushes. She drew her bow and dropped it with one clean shot to the neck. Then she nailed the horned rabbit, then another pheasant mid-flight. She was like a hunting machine. Every arrow found its mark. Alina, meanwhile, was sulking hard. Her lips stuck out further with every kill Sarah made. She had nothing to fight. Ander patted her shoulder and reminded her that when something big showed up, she'd be the one they needed. Sure enough, a winter wolf appeared, but this time it took one look at them and ran away. Alina drew her sword, wanting to chase, but Ander held her back. Do not chase wolves into their own territory. They headed home with 3 pheasants and 5 horned rabbits. Not bad for a safe, easy hunt. Back at the shack, Ander started processing the kills. His sharp memory kicked in again, and Ander unlocked a new skill, butchering F rank. Another free life skill from just doing things. Ander kept the fattest chicken and 1 rabbit for dinner, then sold the rest in town. All the skins and horns totaled up to 10 silver and 50 copper. Not wolf money, but almost 0 risk and very efficient. Sarah's scouting was the key to the whole operation. Ander bought supplies and headed home feeling great. Then Ander opened the door and got hit by the worst smell. Alina had decided to cook dinner as a surprise. She'd seen him add wild fruits to soups before, so she dumped every single fruit she'd gathered that day into a pot with chicken meat. Unripe ones, overripe ones, things that had no business being in food. Sarah was sitting next to her, looking genuinely impressed by Alina's cooking. Both of them stared at Ander with bright, eager eyes, waiting for praise. Ander tasted it. The flavor was an explosion of sour, bitter, astringent, and numbing all at once. It was a crime against food. His stomach tried to reject it immediately, but those 2 hopeful faces were looking right at him. Ander forced a smile that probably looked more like a grimace and said it was very creative. Next time, Ander would handle the cooking. After the cooking disaster, Ander banned everyone from the kitchen and took the team back to the Black Forest. Same safe strategy. Stick to the edges, no deep exploration. Sarah was incredible again. Her scouting found everything before it even knew they were there. And her arrows did not miss. 3 pheasants, 2 horned rabbits, and the big prize, a snow fox. The thing was nearly invisible in the white snow, but Sarah spotted it and put an arrow straight through its eye socket, keeping the fur completely undamaged. Her archery leveled up right there. Alina, on the other hand, had nothing to do and was getting grumpier by the minute. Her only kill was a fat squirrel that ran past her feet. She reflexively chopped it clean in half with her sword. They all stared at the 2 pieces in silence. Ander awkwardly said, "Nice work," while thinking the fur was completely ruined. On the way home, they bumped into Natasha. She was shirtless in the freezing cold, barely carrying a massive iron-backed boar on one shoulder, like it weighed nothing. Several grown men behind her were struggling to carry a smaller one between them. She made a point of flexing in front of Ander, showing off her muscles, and her kill giving him that look again. Ander praised her as fast as Ander could, and practically ran away, dragging both girls behind him. The snow fox skin was perfect. The leather worker nearly lost his mind when he saw it. 20 silver coins, no haggling needed. Combined with selling the other game, it was a very profitable day. Over the next few days, hunting became routine. Sarah's skills kept the small game flowing steadily. Then they hit the jackpot. Sarah wounded a large antler deer with a poisoned arrow. The toxin slowed it down, and Ander finally got to use Alina. Her tracking skill led them right to the collapsed deer, and Ander finished it off with his spear. The three of them dragged that heavy thing back to town, where it sold for a massive 50 silver coins. Ander was counting his money with a big smile when someone knocked on the door. The town's tax collector, grinning from ear to ear, informed him that hunting large game required paying 40% tax. 40% of his beautiful 50 silver coins. Even in a fantasy world, you cannot escape the tax man. The tax collector's smiling face was scarier than Natasha's tusks. He explained that the Black Forest belongs to the local baron, and hunting large game means paying 40% tax. Small stuff like birds and rabbits was fine, but wolves and deer had to pay up. Ander handed over 20 of his 50 silver coins, trying not to cry. But the collector also mentioned something useful: a monthly hunting permit for 20 silver that covers unlimited kills of any size. No extra tax. Ander did the math fast. 1 big catch would pay it back. 2 would mean pure profit. Ander ran straight to the town office and bought the permit. Next day they headed into the forest full of confidence. Permit in pocket, Sarah's bow ready. Alina itching for a fight. What could go wrong? Everything. Sarah spotted a horned rabbit and shot it clean. But the second it hit the ground, the bushes exploded. A massive bare brown fur, red eyes starving from a bad hibernation burst out. It swallowed the rabbit whole in 2 bites bones, and all then locked eyes on them. This wasn't a wolf. This was a real monster. Thick hide, enormous strength, and desperate with hunger. Running was pointless. Bears are faster than people and can climb trees. Ander screamed orders. Alina flanked left. Sarah fell back to shoot. Ander threw himself in front of Sarah with his shield. Sarah's first poisoned arrow hit the bear's shoulder but barely penetrated through the fat and fur. It just made the thing angrier. The bear swung its massive paw at Ander. The impact was like getting hit by a car. Ander flew several meters through the air and crashed into the snow. His left arm went numb with blinding pain. The shield had deep claw marks gouged into it. Alina seized the opening and slashed the bear's side, drawing blood, but the wound was shallow. The bear spun and swatted her sword clean out of her hands, then sent her tumbling through the snow. Sarah fired her second and last poison arrow at the bear's face. It hit the cheek instead of the eye. Not fatal, but the poison was now in its system from 2 arrows. They just needed time. The bear charged straight at Sarah. She dropped her bow, pulled out her horn dagger, and started dodging. Her agility was insane. She weaved between the bear's strikes like a butterfly, scratching it with the dagger whenever she could. She was buying them time, but barely. Ander dragged himself up from the snow. Alina recovered faster than him. She grabbed her sword despite her hands bleeding from the impact and charged back in from the side. Ander yelled at them both. "Do not fight head on. Keep moving. The poison needs time to work." But the bear had had enough of Alina's harassment. It whipped around with terrifying speed. She had just finished a swing and could not dodge. The bear's claws tore straight through her leather armor like paper. Blood sprayed across the white snow. Both Sarah and Ander screamed her name at the same time. Alina was bleeding badly, her face turning white. Panic hit Ander for a second, then his brain snapped into focus. She could not survive another hit in her normal state. There was only one option: Alina go berserk. She let out that inhuman howl, and her eyes went blood red. The berserk power somehow forced her wounds to stop bleeding. Her muscles swelled, veins popping. The bear hesitated for a split second, and that was enough. She gripped her sword with both hands and brought it down with insane force. The blade split through the bear's paw, snapping bone, then carved deep into its shoulder. Ander charged in and drove his spear into the bear's exposed belly. Sarah darted in like a ghost and stabbed at its eye with her horn dagger. The bear went completely berserk, itself swinging wildly, but Alina in her rage state was somehow dodging everything while hacking away relentlessly. Blood covered the snow. Between Alina's savage attacks, his spear, Sarah's dagger, and the poison finally kicking in, the bear collapsed about a minute later. Then something bizarre happened. Alina did not realize the fight was over. Still in berserk mode, she grabbed the bear's hind leg and started dragging the massive carcass toward home. Hundreds of pounds of dead bear, and she was hauling it like a workhorse. Even in mindless rage, her deepest instinct was to bring food back to the place where she felt safe and warm. That hit Ander harder than the bear did. She made it almost to the edge of town before the berserk wore off. Her eyes cleared, the wounds reopened, and she collapsed face first into the snow unconscious. Ander told Sarah to guard the bear. Ander scooped Alina up and ran for the old herbalist's house as fast as Ander could. The old man did not turn them away. He poured a yellow liquid on her wounds that instantly cleaned and stopped the bleeding. Then he fed her a red potion that made her flesh visibly regenerate, muscle knitting together before his eyes. It was like watching magic. His crappy salves were playground mud compared to this. Then the herbalist handed him the bill. 1 gold coin for the cleaning potion, 3 gold coins for the healing potion. 4 gold coins, total 80 silver. Ander nearly fainted. That was more money than Ander had ever held at once. The old man smirked and reminded him that real alchemy costs real money. Maybe now Ander understood why his little salve business was just a cute hobby. Ander had to beg him to let him pay after selling the bear. He agreed, but said if Ander was short even 1 copper, he'd disassemble the dog girl and sell the parts. Ander was pretty sure he was joking. Mostly sure. Ander left his shop with his stomach in knots. 80 silver coins. Ander had no idea if a bear was even worth that much. But Alina's life had been saved, and now Ander had to figure out how to pay for it before the old man changed his mind. While the old herbalist treated Alina, Ander grabbed Sarah, and they dragged the enormous bear carcass to the main street. It caused an instant sensation. People crowded around, stunned that the pretty boy and his weird girls had actually killed a forest bear. The town butcher pushed through the crowd and offered 100 silver on the spot. His heart jumped. That would cover Alina's medical bill with some leftover, but Ander hesitated, hoping for a better offer. Then a well-dressed man stepped forward, the Baron's steward. He offered 150 silver. The Baron needed impressive game to entertain visiting nobles, and this bear was perfect. Nobody dared compete with the Baron's household, so the butcher backed off immediately. The steward's servants handed Ander a heavy coin purse and carted away the bear. Clean, fast, no drama. Ander was screaming with joy inside while trying to look calm on the outside. 150 silver coins. Ander stuffed the bag in his coat and ran straight back to the herbalist. Ander counted out 80 silver coins on his table, Alina's full bill. The old man seemed pleased Ander paid so quickly. Ander tried asking about his healing potion recipe, dreaming of becoming rich selling the stuff himself. He laughed in his face. He told Ander those were real alchemical potions infused with magic bought from a master alchemist in Frost City. Without any magical ability, Ander had 0 chance of making them. So much for that dream. Ander had been admiring this guy as some kind of genius healer. Turns out he was just a reseller. He gave Ander a small bottle of scar prevention ointment for Alina and told him to keep her from any intense activity while she healed. Ander carried her sleeping body home and laid her on their bed. Back at the shack, Ander did the math. After the 80 silver medical bill, Ander still had 70 silver coins. More money than Ander had ever held at once in this world. But what a day. They nearly died fighting that bear. Alina almost bled out. Ander spent a fortune on medicine, then made it all back, and more thanks to the Baron's timing. Ander smiled at Sarah, told her the crisis was over, then immediately collapsed as the adrenaline wore off. His whole body ached, especially his left arm where the bear had smashed his shield. The pain Ander had been ignoring all day hit him all at once. Despite nearly dying, the rewards from the bear fight were massive. The handbook rated A rank, their first A, and the payouts were huge. Ander got 2 stat points and 1 skill point. Ander dumped both stat points into toughness, bringing it to 10. The skill point went into upgrading shield bash from F to E. Instantly, new techniques for using the shield flooded his mind. Alina's combat instinct jumped dramatically. Her swordsmanship rose and she got 2 stat points, plus a skill point. Ander strengthened her and upgraded Berserk from E to D, her most important ability. Sarah's stealth talent also awakened further, and she received points and a skill upgrade. Ander boosted her toughness and precision aiming. For the next 2 days, they entered rest mode. Ander played full-time nurse for Alina, changing bandages and feeding her soft bread soaked in broth. She slept most of the time but recovered fast. His own arm healed quickly too, thanks to his homemade salve. That actually made Ander furious. If his cheap salve worked this well, Ander had been massively underpricing it. Ander could have been charging 10 times more this whole time. Sarah spent her 2 silver coins of pocket money on a pile of dried fish which she hoarded like a squirrel. She'd sit by Alina's bed munching fish and keeping watch. It was adorable. Once his arm recovered, Ander started serious combat training with Sarah as his sparring partner. Her agility versus his was not even fair. She demolished him at first. Her wooden practice stick would zip past his shield from impossible angles and poke him everywhere. Arms, shoulders, backside, she'd tilt her head and remind him that enemies would not slow down for him. With that little smirk, she pressed harder. But Ander kept at it day after day. The shield bash knowledge in his head slowly translated into muscle memory. His blocks got tighter, his timing improved. Ander learned to use the shield size to cut off her attack angles before she could strike. After several days, something clicked. Sarah started having real trouble getting through his defense. Every time she lunged, his shield was already there. And the instant she pulled back, his practice stick would snake out for a counter hit, forcing her to retreat. She tried circling around him. Ander learned to pivot with the shield fast enough to track her. They were actually fighting evenly. Ander, the guy with garbage stats, was holding off the girl with incredible agility. It was the magic of the shield and thrust style. Every defensive video game player knows when your reflexes are bad, hide behind a big shield and poke. It works in real life too. Sarah got competitive about it, her cat eyes narrowing as she pressed harder. She warned him not to get too cocky, her attacks getting sharper. But Ander was grinning like an idiot behind his shield. For the first time, Ander actually felt like Ander could hold his own in a fight, at least defensively. Looking at everyone's updated stats, their little team had come a long way. His toughness now matched Alina's. Alina's strength had risen with her combat instinct. Sarah's precision aiming and stealth had grown sharply. They were no longer the desperate, starving nobodies who'd stumbled together in a freezing shack. They were becoming a real adventuring party. Alina healed up fast. Within days, she was bouncing around wanting to train again. But Ander made her rest a bit longer, while Ander continued sparring with Sarah. Once Alina was fully recovered, Ander let her join practice. The difference between fighting her and Sarah was night and day. Sarah was quick and tricky. Her strikes came from weird angles. Alina was raw power. Every swing of her practice stick felt like getting hit by a sledgehammer through his shield. His arms went numb after just a few blocks. Ander even got cocky enough to have them both attack him at once. That lasted about 10 seconds before Ander was on the ground begging them to stop hitting him. Alina rushed over, worried she'd hurt him, and Ander shamelessly grabbed her hand, pretending to be in pain so she'd rub his arms. Sarah saw right through it but smirked anyway. Then the Baron's steward showed up at their door. The Baron wanted to see Ander alone. At the manor, Ander found the Baron sitting in a warm stone hall decorated with animal trophies. In his hand was his old lighter, the one Ander had sold ages ago that eventually became murder evidence and then got confiscated. He asked about it, and Ander fed him the same magical fire device from the mysterious East story. He loved it. He said Ander was going to give it to the king as a rare gift. His disposable plastic lighter was becoming royal tribute. This world never stopped surprising him. Then the Baron got serious. His logging camp, the one that supplies charcoal to Frost City for the king, was being attacked by an old bear. Workers had been dragged off. The camp was shut down and he needed the problem solved fast. He'd already hired 2 experienced hunting parties, but since his team had killed a bear before, he wanted them as a third squad. The pay was 300 silver coins with 100 up front as a deposit right now. The catch, the bear carcass, goes to him. 300 silver was enormous, double what they got for their bear. But an old bear terrorizing a logging camp meant it was probably bigger, meaner, and smarter than what they'd faced before. Still, with two other teams joining the hunt and that kind of money on the table, there was only one answer. Ander accepted, took the heavy bag of 100 silver coins, and headed home, excited and nervous in equal measure. Tomorrow morning they'd report to the manor and head out to hunt their second bear. Ander dumped the 100 silver coins on the table and watched Alina and Sarah's eyes pop. Alina started biting coins to check if they were real, tails spinning like a propeller. Sarah was quietly calculating how many dried fish she could buy. When Ander told them about the 300 silver bear hunt job, Alina immediately forgot she'd nearly died fighting a bear last time. She was ready to charge out the door right then. Ander reminded her how she'd been shaking behind him when mere thugs showed up weeks ago. She just tilted her head and said with complete sincerity that because Ander was here now, as long as Ander was with them, she was not afraid of anything. That hit him right in the ego. Ander tried to play it cool but could not stop smiling. First things first, equipment upgrades. At the blacksmith, Ander bought Alina a proper new iron two-handed sword for 18 silver. Her old one was chipped and nearly ruined from the last bear fight. She swung it a few times, and her ears trembled with joy. Then Ander bought 3 iron chest plates, crude curved metal pieces that strap over your armor. Ugly but functional. 12 silver each one for each of them, plus extra quality arrows for Sarah. Half the deposit was gone before they even started, but Ander did not care. Survival equipment is not where you cut costs. That night, Ander grilled lamb skewers for morale. Both girls ate until they could barely move, praising his cooking between bites. Later, Alina tried sneaking over to warm his bed as thanks. But Sarah swatted her face with her tail and hissed that Ander needed proper rest before fighting a bear. Alina retreated to her own blanket, pouting. Next morning, they geared up iron plates over their armor weapons, checked poison arrows prepared, and headed to the Baron's manor. 2 other teams were already there. The first was Natasha and her crew of burly hunters. She flexed at Ander and winked. Ander looked away as fast as humanly possible. The second team was a pair Ander had never seen. A tall young man in chainmail carrying a massive greatsword, and a small, quick-looking girl with twin short swords. Sarah whispered they were not locals, probably traveling adventurers. The Baron's steward announced everyone was assembled and sent them off with pack horses carrying supplies. Natasha's group led the way. The mystery duo followed quietly, and his team brought up the rear. Ander looked at Alina gripping her new sword with excitement. Sarah scanned the surroundings with sharp cat eyes. Ander told them to stay sharp and stay safe. They followed the Baron's servants along a snowy forest path toward the logging camp. They explained that the workers were trapped inside their buildings, too terrified to come out. The supplies on the pack horses were just to keep them from starving. On the way, Natasha fell back to walk beside them and asked how Ander trained Alina and Sarah. Before Ander could answer, Alina jumped in with a passionate defense of his training methods, listing every victory they'd achieved. Sarah quietly nodded along. Natasha watched their loyalty with growing interest and kept giving Ander looks that made his skin crawl. The mysterious duo at the rear stayed silent the whole time. The girl with twin swords seemed to be eavesdropping, though. As they got close to the camp, the air started smelling like wood and blood. Sarah climbed a tree to scout ahead and her face went pale. There was a bear inside the camp, a huge white bear. Then the wind shifted, carrying their scent, and the horses sent straight toward the camp. A roar shook the forest. Sarah screamed from her perch. It spotted them. It was charging. Everyone scrambled into combat positions. Sarah drew a poison arrow. Natasha's hunters spread out with bows and javelins. The quiet duo finally drew their weapons. The man gripped a massive greatsword. The woman pulled twin short swords. Then Ander saw it and his blood went cold. This was nothing like the bear they'd fought before. This thing was over 3 meters tall when it reared up. Its fur was ghostly white, its eyes blood red. Every step it took shook the ground and left craters in the snow. If Ander tried blocking this thing with his shield, Ander would be flattened into paste. Sarah's poison arrow hit its shoulder but barely sank in. The fat layer was too thick. The hunters launched arrows and javelins, but most bounced off. Only Natasha's thrown spear actually punched into its chest, making it stumble for a second. Then the white bear reared up on its hind legs and slammed both front paws into the ground. Natasha screamed for everyone to dodge. Ander did not understand why, but Ander trusted her instinct and shoved Alina sideways. They both dove into the snow. A split second later, massive stone spikes erupted from the ground right where they'd been standing. Each one was half a person, tall, razor sharp, shooting up like deadly pillars. They missed them by inches. Ander could feel the cold air off them on his back. Ander lay in the snow, heart hammering, staring at the forest of stone spikes behind him. This bear could use magic. It had actual combat abilities. This wasn't a hunt anymore. This was a boss fight. And Ander was seriously starting to think the Baron's 300 silver was less a reward and more a funeral payment. The white bear surprised everyone. After launching those ground spikes, it turned and ran into the deep forest instead of pressing its attack. The mystery duo reacted first. The swordsman charged after it with the twin-blade girl right behind. Natasha slapped his back hard enough to nearly knock him over and explained. This was an earth bear. It could not use that spike ability back to back. They had to kill it now, or it would terrorize not just the camp, but the whole town. They all gave chase. The bear was fast, even wounded, disappearing into the trees. But between the old hunter's tracking experience and Alina's tracking skill, they stayed on it. Sarah's scouting from the treetops kept catching the bear's ambush attempts before they worked. The bear realized it could not shake them. It turned and charged straight at them, everyone engaged. Natasha's team threw their last javelins. The great sword guy was landing devastating hits, deep cuts that cracked bone. His partner darted around, slashing at weak spots. Alina circled, looking for openings. Sarah rained arrows from above. Ander stayed back with his shield ready. The bear was covered in wounds, slowing down from poison and blood loss. They thought they had it. Then it stood up and slammed both paws into the ground again. This time the spikes radiated outward in an expanding ring like a shockwave. One hunter got his leg impaled. The twin-blade girl took a deep gash across her side. Her partner grabbed her and pulled her clear, then fed her a healing potion. She was back on her feet in seconds. But the bear wasn't done. It raised its massive paws and smashed its own ground spikes. Razor-sharp stone fragments exploded in every direction like shrapnel. Everyone got hit. Sarah was safe up in her tree, but the rest of them were shredded. Ander threw his shield up and pulled Alina behind him. The shield caught most of the stones, but plenty got through. His legs and Alina's arms were cut. Natasha was bleeding everywhere, covering her face with her arms. The hunters were down one, possibly dead. The mystery duo was drenched in blood, but still standing, the man shielding his injured partner. After that double attack, the white bear was finally showing exhaustion. It panted heavily, but so did everyone else. Half their force was out of the fight. The hunters were done. Natasha was wounded. The young pair was battered. His team was actually in the best shape thanks to the shield, but they were all bleeding. This was it. The bear was tired, but if they gave it time to recover, they were all dead. Ander looked at Alina and gave the order. Go berserk. Alina went berserk the moment Ander gave the order. Her upgraded berserk was noticeably stronger than before. She charged the wounded white bear like a demon, swinging her new iron sword with enough force to match the greatsword guy. Deep cuts opened across the bear's body with every hit. Ander pushed forward with his shield and spear, targeting existing wounds. Natasha and the other duo jumped back in together. They overwhelmed the exhausted beast. One final howl, and the massive white bear crashed to the ground. This time when Ander yelled for Alina to stop, she actually listened. The red faded from her eyes almost immediately. The upgraded berserk was more controllable. She collapsed from exhaustion, but Ander was ready and caught her. The handbook rated the mission and gave out rewards across the board. Ander strengthened himself and upgraded shield bash. Alina's combat instinct rose and her berserk jumped to C rank. Sarah's stealth, precision, aiming, and archery improved through combat. While everyone recovered, Ander handed out his homemade salves to all the injured hunters free of charge. It cost him almost nothing and bought a lot of goodwill. Natasha even pulled out an expensive healing potion for the hunter whose leg had been impaled, saving his life. The mystery duo finally introduced themselves. Kai and Lena, adventurers from Frost City heading south. Kai and Ander hit it off immediately. He told Ander about the wider world, kingdoms, city-states, different cultures beyond this frozen north. It was the first real information Ander had gotten about what lay beyond this tiny town. Then he asked why Ander was with two unusual girls. Ander launched into his standard speech about their unique beauty. To his surprise, Kai's eyes lit up, and he called Ander a kindred spirit. He leaned in and explained that he understood perfectly because he felt the same way about the purer bond between men. Kai and his partner were heading south where such relationships were more accepted. Ander nearly fell over. Kai thought Ander was like him. Ander very politely and very firmly clarified that his interests were strictly in the cute animal ears and tails department, not the muscular swordsman department. Kai was a bit disappointed but took it well. They dragged the bear back to the logging camp. The workers cheered when they saw it was dead. Ander overheard some of them whispering that the bear had only attacked because the baron had captured its cub to give to a princess as a pet. A mother bear protecting her baby. That left a bitter taste, but the crisis was over and the workers were safe. Back at the baron's manor, they collected the remaining 200 silver coins. Combined with the deposit minus equipment costs, Ander was sitting on a small fortune. Kai, Lena, and Natasha's group headed to the herbalist for treatment. His team went straight to the market. Ander told Alina and Sarah to buy whatever they wanted. No limits today. Meat, they both shouted at the same time. They loaded up on fresh meat, vegetables, and even a small barrel of ale. Back home, Ander cooked a massive victory feast. Grilled meat, sizzling thick stew, bubbling cheap beer flowing. Alina was weak but eating enthusiastically. Sarah was trying to act cool while demolishing skewer after skewer. Sitting there with a full stomach, a heavy coin purse, and two girls who'd fought beside him against a monster bear. Ander felt genuinely good about where life was heading. As long as Ander could forget about a certain swordsman who now thought of him as a fellow traveler on his particular romantic journey. Before leaving town, Kai treated them to dinner at the local tavern. He still could not understand why Ander was not heading to Frost City to register as an official adventurer. He said their skills were more than enough. Ander made excuses about needing more training, but really Ander had just been comfortable playing it safe in this small town. Kai and Lena left the next morning heading south. Kai invited Ander to join them someday. Ander smiled and waved secretly, hoping they'd never cross paths again. Nice guy. But his kindred spirit misunderstanding was something Ander desperately wanted to leave behind. After the bear hunt, their reputation in town peaked. Nobody dared badmouth them to their faces anymore. But the whispers got even more creative. People decided Ander had a fetish for ugly things and that it was some kind of rare disease. Ander nearly exploded when Ander heard that. These people's beauty standards were beyond saving. Ander channeled his frustration into hunting. They spent over a month going deep into the Black Forest, taking down wolves and other game. Money wasn't an issue anymore, so Ander even stopped selling salves. Then Ander noticed a problem. The Adventurer's Handbook stopped giving rewards. No matter how many wolves or rabbits they killed, nothing. Zero response. Ander realized they'd outgrown this area. The handbook needed real challenges, not routine hunts. Their growth had completely stalled. There was only one answer. Leave Frost Wind Town and become real adventurers. Ander brought it up that evening by the fire. Sarah jumped at the idea immediately. She hated this town and its cruel stares. Alina looked around their little shack, the one they'd patched up together from nothing into something like a home. She was quiet for a moment, then she looked at Ander and said wherever Ander was, that was home. That hit him hard. In the firelight, they drifted closer. Her lips were right there. Ander leaned in. Ahem. Sarah's icy cough shattered the moment. She stood with arms crossed, glaring. If they were leaving, they should decide already. Stop wasting time. The mood was completely destroyed. Alina turned bright red, ears drooping. Ander wanted to scream. They started packing that night. Money weapons gear. Anything too heavy to carry would stay behind. Then in the dead of night, Sarah shook them awake. Something was wrong. Ander listened and heard it. Clashing metal, screaming, inhuman roaring sounds that had no business existing in a sleeping town. They threw on their armor, grabbed weapons, and stepped outside. The town was on fire. Multiple buildings were burning, painting the night sky blood red. The sounds of fighting, crying, and terrible howling filled the air. Frost Wind Town looked like it was being torn apart. Alina gripped her sword, voice shaking. Sarah's cat eyes narrowed to slits. Nothing good was happening. Ander stared at the hellish scene, face grim. Whatever was attacking this town, they were about to find out. His first instinct when Ander saw the burning town was to run. Grab the girls, grab the money, disappear into the Black Forest. They were leaving anyway, right? But then Ander thought about the people here. Natasha, who'd saved them from those thugs. The old miner who bought his salves. The grumpy herbalist who saved Alina's life. This town wasn't all bad. Ander cursed under his breath and made his decision. Ander sent Sarah to scout. She was fast, quiet, and had the best eyes. Alina and Ander killed the fire in their shack, hid in the shadows outside, and waited. Before Sarah returned, 3 bandits came strolling toward their house. They laughed about loot and women. They had no idea Ander and Alina were there. The moment one reached for the door, Ander gave the signal. Ander drove his spear through one bandit's back before he even turned around. Alina decapitated the second with a single sword stroke. The third tried to run. She chased him down and took his head off too. 3 kills in seconds. What surprised Ander was how Ander felt afterward. No nausea, no horror, just adrenaline. Months of killing monsters had changed something in him. Alina looked the same, breathing hard, but almost excited. The Berserker class was doing things to her personality. They hid the bodies and waited. Sarah came back looking pale. The news was terrible. Nearly 100 bandits had attacked the town, killing, burning, and looting everything. But the worst part, they had an ogre with them. A real ogre over 3 meters tall carrying a massive spiked club. Sarah had watched it kill Sheriff Hank with a single blow. Then it picked up his body and ate him. His blood went cold. The bandits' main target seemed to be the Baron's manor. Most townspeople were hiding in their homes. But Natasha was fighting back, holding a position at the tavern with some volunteers. And the ogre was heading straight for her. Alina grabbed his arm, eyes filling with tears. Natasha helped her. She was a good person. They could not let her die. She was right. Natasha had saved them when they had nothing. That debt had to be paid. Ander swore and started preparing. Ander pulled out every drop of paralysis poison Ander had. Ander had been stockpiling mushroom toxin from their forest trips. Every single arrow of Sarah's got coated. Alina's sword, his spear, everything got poisoned. Ander looked at his team fully armed and ready. They would harass and distract. They would not fight that thing head-on. Everyone understood. They moved through the burning streets using alleys and shadows. Sarah picked off isolated bandits with silent arrows. Alina and Ander finished others before they could raise alarms. Every fight brought them closer to the tavern and the roar shaking the town. Natasha's defenders were already under pressure. Bandit archers pinned them inside while the ogre lumbered closer. The giant monster raised its club. One swing could turn the tavern entrance into splinters and bodies. Sarah fired first. A poisoned arrow buried itself in the ogre's neck. The creature roared and turned. Ander shouted, drawing its attention away from Natasha. The ogre charged. Ander ran. There was no shame in the plan. Run, Kite, and let the poison do its work. Sarah kept firing from rooftops. Every arrow targeted soft flesh joints, neck face. Alina darted in when the ogre overextended and carved deep wounds into its legs. Ander jabbed with his spear whenever the monster's back turned. The ogre's club smashed walls, carts, and frozen ground. One near miss threw Ander through the air from the shock alone. Natasha joined the attack with brutal punches and heavy weapons. Relief flooded her face when she realized who had come. But the relief was short-lived. More bandits poured toward them. Sarah shifted targets and began dropping archers. Alina protected Ander from 2 swordsmen, cutting them down before they reached him. The ogre grew slower. Poison was spreading through its massive body. Its knees began to shake. Its swings lost precision. Ander saw the change and screamed for everyone to hit it now. Natasha smashed one knee. Alina cut the other leg. Ander drove his spear into a wound beneath its ribs. Sarah's arrow struck its eye. The ogre crashed forward. The paralysis had its nervous system locked down. Alina climbed onto its back while it struggled. Her sword rose high. One savage strike buried the blade into its neck. Another widened the wound. Natasha finished the monster with a crushing blow. The ogre stopped moving. For one breath, the street became silent. Then the defenders roared. The monster that had eaten Sheriff Hank was dead. They helped Natasha's group push toward the Baron's manor, where the main attack had already been repelled. Bandits were running. Some surrendered. Others were hunted through the streets. By dawn, Frostwind Town was still standing, damaged, bloody, and smoking, but alive. The handbook exploded with rewards. The ogre battle had pushed every member of the team again. Ander gained stronger combat ability and support skills. Alina's combat instinct climbed to 60%. Sarah's stealth and archery advanced. Their teamwork had become something the handbook now recognized as real. The Baron rewarded the defenders heavily. Ander received 30 gold coins for his party's contribution. The number almost stopped his heart. Yet the victory felt different from the bear hunt. Sheriff Hank was gone, homes had burned, people cried beside bodies in the snow. Winning did not erase the price. Ander looked at the town he'd once wanted to leave without a second thought. Now he understood that part of him had already become tied to this place. The attack also proved something else. The team could no longer stay hidden in a tiny border town. Their strength was attracting larger threats and larger opportunities. Frost City was the next step. When departure day came, Alina's eyes got red, saying goodbye to the shack. Sarah pretended not to care but lingered at the doorway. Ander looked at the patched walls, the crude beds, and the fire pit where their first real meals had simmered. This broken place had saved all three of them. They left it behind anyway. Their real adventure now began beyond Frostwind Town. The road to Frost City was long and bitterly cold. They traveled with heavier packs and better equipment than the starving pair who had first entered the Black Forest. Alina carried her sword with confidence. Sarah watched the horizon like a professional scout. Ander walked between them, shield on his back, already thinking about money quests and food. Some things never changed. Frost City appeared behind stone walls and guarded gates. The place was enormous compared with Frostwind Town. Carriages crowded the roads, merchants shouted beneath hanging signs. Soldiers patrolled in organized groups. The city felt alive in a way their old town never had. The guards gave Alina and Sarah some looks, but did not make trouble. Ander immediately began searching for somewhere to stay. Hotels were expensive. Worse, they could not cook in a hotel. That alone made Ander reject half the options. Feeding Alina and Sarah with tavern food every day would bankrupt him. They eventually rented a small house. Ander paid 3 months upfront 30 silver. It hurt, but the house had a kitchen bed, storage space, and enough room to train. That made it worth the price. Then came the sleeping situation. Alina naturally assumed she'd share with Ander again. Sarah silently stared at her. Ander stared at the ceiling, silently torn between feeling incredibly lucky and incredibly tested. Somehow they survived the argument without bloodshed. The next goal was the Adventurer Guild. The guild hall was packed with armed people, quest boards, reception counters, and enough noise to shake the beams. Ander finally felt like he'd entered a real fantasy world. Registration tested combat and basic ability. Alina entered with chin up, eyes sharp, radiating "do not mess with me" energy. Sarah looked bored until someone questioned her size. Then her stare turned cold enough to freeze the room. Ander worried most about himself. When his turn came, the testing fees alone nearly caused him physical pain. But when the receptionist explained that stronger rankings meant better paying quests, Ander swallowed his pain and paid up. Money was the language Ander understood best. Their results surprised the guild. Alina and Sarah were among the strongest newcomers the receptionist had seen in a while. Ander lacked their raw talent, but his support ability and battlefield experience kept him from looking useless. They became registered adventurers. Their early city life settled into a new rhythm. Wake up, cook breakfast, head to the guild, grab whatever low-level quests were available. Goblins, guard work, small monster extermination. Nothing glamorous, but each job taught them how the city and guild operated. One quest sent them half a day's travel west. A village had reported goblin kidnappings. The villagers were terrified. One old man said the goblins had almost kidnapped the village's prettiest girl. Ander looked at the woman they pointed to and nearly lost his composure. Northern beauty standards still made absolutely no sense. Sarah was supposed to be scouting but got a little careless, probably thinking goblins were beneath her attention. That mistake let one creature surprise her. Before Ander could process the danger, the goblin insulted Sarah. Then it called Alina ugly. Alina exploded with rage. Her greatsword cut through the first goblin before anyone could blink. The team followed tracks toward a narrow ravine. Perfect ambush territory for goblins, but terrible for them if they were careless. Sarah corrected her earlier mistake. She climbed high and began marking hidden enemies. Ander organized the advance. Shield forward. Alina ready to break formations, Sarah eliminating archers. The goblins expected frightened villagers. Instead, they met a team hardened by bears, ogres, and months of winter combat. Sarah's fencing had improved and it showed. When enemies reached her, the cat girl no longer panicked. She slipped around crude blades and cut tendons. Alina demolished anything that tried to stand in front of her. Ander used his shield to protect openings and his spear to finish wounded targets. The battle became one-sided. They found the kidnapped victims deeper inside. Some goblins tried to flee. Ander ordered them all killed. It sounded cold, but Ander had seen what monsters and bandits did when allowed to regroup. Afterward, he softened his voice with Alina. Ander told her she did well and patted her head. Her anger vanished instantly. Sarah rolled her eyes. The village quest paid well enough, and their guild reputation rose. More work followed. During one visit to the quest board, a notice caught Ander's eye. It mentioned the Alchemy Guild and herb apprentices. Those words were more interesting to him than any monster bounty. Ander had never forgotten the old herbalist laughing at his salves. Real potions were expensive. Even basic formulas could mean money. Ander began asking questions. That curiosity eventually pulled his team into an escort job connected to several alchemy apprentices. The pay was solid. The group would protect civilians traveling toward a remote location. Altogether, the reward reached around 180 silver. Ander accepted before anyone could finish explaining the boring parts. A hooded girl joined the travelers. She introduced herself as Lydia. Something about her posture and speech felt wrong for an ordinary traveler. She was too educated, too controlled. She also had a baby bear with her. 9 people and a baby bear ended up stuffed into one cart. The trip was uncomfortable. Ander still considered it profitable. The alchemy apprentices talked about herbs, ingredients, and guild work. Ander listened to every word. When Ander tried fishing for actual recipes, the apprentices clammed up. Guild secrets were protected fiercely. One of them reminded him that knowing royal or alchemical secrets gets people killed. Ander laughed but remembered the warning. At camp, Ander cooked smoked meat and oat porridge over a fire. Lydia watched his team with growing curiosity. She noticed how Alina and Sarah trusted his commands. She also noticed that Ander treated both half-beast girls as normal people. The journey became more dangerous as they entered frozen ruins. Strange magical traces appeared. Lydia knew more about them than she admitted. When Ander questioned her, she dodged. Then they encountered a monster that forced the truth closer to the surface. Ander raised his shield instantly. Alina attacked, Sarah fired. Yet normal strikes barely damaged the creature. His spear only scratched it. Lydia suddenly used magic. Her spell created the opening the team needed. Alina followed with overwhelming force. A second swing took the creature's head clean off. Everyone stared at Lydia. She downplayed it, saying it was just basic self-defense magic. She claimed she could not cast continuously, so they should not rely on her. Ander did not believe that was the whole story. The destination turned out to be tied to something much older. Lydia was clearly here for a reason beyond escort work. Piece by piece, the truth emerged. The bizarre beauty standards of this kingdom might actually be the result of an ancient magical curse. Lydia's distant ancestor, the legendary Witch Queen, had placed it on the north. The story was almost too absurd to believe. The Witch Queen had wanted to marry a prince. The curse twisted what the entire kingdom considered beautiful. Generations later, everyone treated conventionally attractive people as ugly, while praising features Ander found terrifying. The madness suddenly had an explanation. Lydia wanted to break that curse. That was the real reason she'd come out here. Her bloodline and knowledge had led her toward an ancient palace hidden in ice. The group continued deeper. Strange mirrors and lenses were frozen into the walls around the palace. They were not decoration. Light had to be redirected through them. Ander used his memories and common sense to help solve the mechanism. Inside, more puzzles awaited. Pressure plates, statues that had to be pushed into place, wall murals that concealed instructions. Ander loved it. For once, brute force was not the only answer. Sarah's observation and stealth helped reveal traps. Alina moved heavy stone when required. Lydia interpreted old symbols. Ander connected pieces and organized everyone. The palace finally opened its deepest chamber. Inside, hovering above an ice pedestal, was a small crystal wand with a huge blue gemstone. Lydia's expression changed. This was what she had been searching for. The wand was tied to the curse. Before she could safely leave with it, soldiers arrived. The soldiers and one male apprentice told Lydia to hand over the wand and come home. The confrontation exposed another secret. Lydia was not an ordinary traveler. She was a princess. The soldiers served the crown prince, Lydia's brother. One of the people among the expedition had been working for him. Lydia's mission had been watched from the beginning. The moment she found the wand, the trap closed. Ander had seconds to decide. Handing Lydia over might keep his team out of royal politics. But the soldiers had already seen too much. Ander's instincts screamed that witnesses would not be allowed to walk away. Fighting erupted. Ander threw his spear at a crossbowman, then drew his short sword and started fighting behind his shield. Sarah vanished into cover. Arrows began finding exposed gaps. Alina charged the soldiers. Lydia cast fire and defensive magic when openings appeared. Smoke and poison filled the chamber. Visibility collapsed. Ander could not see, neither could most of the soldiers. Sarah could still move through the confusion. Her stealth made the chaos her territory. Alina was struck by a poison effect. Her body slowed. Ander made the brutal choice to activate her berserk. The power blew away the poison's effects. Her eyes burned red. Her sword became a storm. Something snapped inside Ander during the battle. These soldiers were not monsters. They were people. Yet they were trying to kill his companions without hesitation. Ander stopped thinking about whether killing felt wrong. He thought about keeping Alina and Sarah alive. Alina swung faster. Sarah's arrows found every weak point. Lydia's spells broke formations. Ander drove his shield into anyone trying to reach the back line. The royal force collapsed. Bodies covered the ancient floor. The surviving enemies were finished before they could escape and report the truth. The decision pushed the team into dangerous territory. Alina paid the price for berserk. The aftermath and blood loss left her weak. The handbook rewarded the team heavily. Alina's combat instinct reached 70%. Sarah's stealth rose. Ander gained more strength and battlefield capability. Yet stats were not the biggest problem. Lydia was a princess. Her brother had sent people after her, and they had killed royal soldiers. Lydia admitted the situation was worse than she'd first explained. Her brother had influenced loyal soldiers and no hesitation about killing family. Ander reminded her that they'd killed a lot of the prince's men. They could not simply walk away anymore. The 3 civilian companions who had survived were paid and sent away. The team started the return journey with Lydia. The baby bear remained with her. Alina and Sarah guarded the princess from either side. During travel, Alina hunted and returned with 3 fat snow rabbits in no time. Life continued in strangely ordinary moments between political disasters. Lydia shared what knowledge she safely could. She could not give Ander protected alchemy formulas, but she could give him better herbalist recipes, ones that did not need magic. Ander almost worshipped her on the spot. These recipes were a gold mine waiting to happen. His merchant brain immediately woke up. At the same time, Lydia's problem grew darker. Her brother's built-up influence meant they needed caution. The road ahead would be dangerous no matter what. Returning Lydia to the capital could put her directly into his hands. Running away would abandon the curse and the kingdom. Ander hated choices where every option looked expensive. They eventually reached Frost City again. Alina and Sarah stood behind him, ready for anything. Lydia's presence drew subtle attention. Palace eyes were everywhere. She needed to return without openly declaring what had happened in the ruins. The dead soldiers were blamed on ancient defense mechanisms. Lydia deflected questions calmly. Ander realized royal training was terrifying in its own way. While Lydia dealt with palace politics, Ander focused on the herbal recipes. He tested mixtures and improved his craft. The results were far beyond his old roadside salves. Better medicine meant better profit. For a brief time, Ander considered staying in Frost City, making money, and avoiding royalty forever. No more palace politics. That dream lasted until new information arrived. The prince's secret operations were becoming harder to ignore. Alina's combat instinct continued toward 80%. Sarah's stealth also approached 80%. The team trained because every instinct Ander had told him another crisis was coming. Then came the news that made his stomach drop. The king was dead. Palace messages claimed Princess Lydia was responsible. The accusation spread fast. Lydia had supposedly poisoned her father and fled. Ander knew it was a lie. Even Sarah agreed immediately. Lydia loved the king. More importantly, the timing was far too convenient. The prince had removed his father and framed his sister in one move. Fine. Ander made his decision. They were going back for Lydia. The capital was locked down. Posters showed Lydia's face in detailed, almost photographic portraits. Guards checked roads and gates. The city had become a trap. Sarah knew every back alley and hidden passage from her cat-like exploring habits. Her knowledge became their way inside. Ander, Alina, and Sarah moved at night. They avoided main roads and lit taverns. Armored patrols marched with purpose. The group pressed deeper into the shadows. One wrong step, and they'd be spotted instantly. Sarah was their secret weapon. Ander sent her ahead to infiltrate the palace alone. Her stealth talent was at 85% now. She moved like a real shadow cat. She used the grappling hook Ander had crafted with his item-making skill to scale the palace walls without a sound. Sarah slipped past every guard. She found Lydia exactly where Ander had guessed. The princess sat alone in her own quarters at a vanity, looking exhausted and sad. Her bear cub slept at her feet. Sarah tapped the window. Lydia nearly jumped out of her skin. Then the princess broke into the biggest smile when she recognized those cat ears. Getting Lydia down from the tower and back over the wall was tense but smooth. Palace security was shockingly thin. Lydia explained why when the group reunited. Her brother had spent the last few days purging the palace. Anyone loyal to the king or potentially opposed to the prince had been killed or imprisoned. Most positions were either filled with his cronies or simply empty. That's why the patrols felt so lax. Ander told her they needed to move immediately before anyone noticed she was gone. But instead of heading for the gates, Lydia led them to a sewer entrance. Ander knew these sewers from their early adventuring days. They had taken a quest to clear mutant rats down here. There were no exits to the outside. The system was just a waste processing facility filled with garbage-eating slimes. Ander could not see how this helped them escape, but Lydia knew something Ander didn't. Deep in the tunnels, she stopped at an ordinary-looking mossy wall. Lydia pulled out her magical necklace and activated it. The wall slid open. A hidden passage led to a small underground stone chamber, completely sealed off from the sewers above. Inside was just a stone table, some benches, and ancient murals on the walls. It was some kind of royal secret room, probably centuries old. Lydia sealed the entrance behind them and finally let herself breathe. She leaned against the cold wall, face full of grief and fury. Then she looked at them. Lydia knew what her brother's secret business was, the one he had been so desperate to hide. In the hidden stone room, Lydia finally revealed it. He'd been kidnapping girls who were considered ugly by northern standards. Girls who actually looked normal by the rest of the world's standards. He sold them as slaves to southern kingdoms. The twisted beauty curse was literally his business model. If Lydia broke the curse, his entire operation would collapse. But that wasn't even why he'd killed the king. The real trigger was that their father had started considering making Lydia his heir instead. The prince panicked. He poisoned his own father, framed Lydia, and seized power. Lydia had a plan. An ancient northern tradition called trial by combat. If enough powerful nobles backed her challenge, even the prince could not refuse it. She believed many nobles secretly hated him. They might prefer a weaker queen they could influence over an unpredictable tyrant. Lydia asked for their help rallying those nobles. This time Ander did not negotiate payment. His gut told him that helping reshape an entire kingdom's history would trigger something massive in the handbook, far more valuable than gold. Ander agreed. Talking people into things was his specialty. Lydia led them through another secret passage. It had been built by her ancestor, the original Witch Queen, and was known only to certain royal women. It ran all the way from under the city to the mountains outside. They emerged miles from the capital free and clear. Ander asked why she hadn't already used the wand to break the beauty curse. Lydia explained two problems. First, the prince had confiscated the wand when she was imprisoned. Second, breaking the spell required her to climb the tallest, most dangerous peak in the North Hoskard Mountain and cast the spell from the summit, so the wand was gone. The mountain was deadly, and right now they had bigger problems. Lydia wanted to visit two potential allies, the Baron of Frostwind, their old hometown, and a western count named Wolf who'd been close to the king. Frostwind Town first. They knew the way, and the Baron owed them. As they set out, the handbook awarded B rank for the prison break, giving everyone 2 stat points. Ander pushed his strength to 12. Alina's toughness hit 15. Sarah's agility reached 17. She was becoming impossibly fast. Then the handbook did something completely new. Pages turned on their own to a gold-bordered section Ander had never seen before. Legendary Adventure Chapter Unlocked, Crown of Ice and Fire. The objective was to help Princess Lydia stabilize the Northern Kingdom. Rewards would be based on final contribution. The warning described extreme difficulty and risk. This was a kingdom-level storyline with legendary rewards. His heart was pounding. This was no longer about hunting wolves and selling salves. They were playing for the fate of an entire nation. Frost Wind Town was just the first stop. The real battle was beginning. A few days later, they arrived back in Frost Wind Town. The townspeople noticed them immediately and noticed they'd changed. Alina still looked sweet and clumsy on the surface, but people could sense something dangerous underneath. Sarah moved like a ghost, barely visible unless she wanted to be. When her green eyes swept over someone, they shivered. Lydia kept her hood up, but the baby bear trotting beside her drew plenty of stares and whispers. People were already hearing rumors about trouble in the capital. The town looked better than Ander expected. The damage from the bandit raid had been repaired. The Baron had done his job on that front. Respect where it was due. At the Baron's manor, Lydia revealed her identity and told him everything. Her brother's slave trade, the king's murder, the frame-up. The Baron slammed his fist on the table so hard the cups jumped. He was furious. When Lydia asked him to support a trial by combat, he hesitated. The tradition settled disputes between nobles through a fight to the death witnessed by the gods. The Baron warned them that the prince had a champion called Bear Crusher Gry. He was a half-ogre monster considered the strongest fighter in the north. He even suggested Lydia just run away south with them. She refused flat out. This was her kingdom, her father's murder to avenge. Her responsibility? Ander stepped forward and reminded the Baron that they'd killed an ogre and a giant bear. Sarah added that bigger targets just meant bigger weak spots. The Baron studied their group. Cocky leader, secretly terrifying dog girl, ice-cold cat girl assassin, and a princess who would not back down. He made his decision and pledged his full support. Then he laid out the political map. To force the prince into accepting the trial, Lydia needed backing from at least 3 of the 4 great noble houses. The Wolf family had been closest to the king, likely supporters. The Bear family were mining lords who held grudges against the prince, persuadable. The Deer family were ambitious schemers probably behind the bandit attack on their town. Difficult. The Eagle family had a daughter engaged to the prince, basically enemies. The plan was to visit Wolf first, then Bear, then try Deer. 3 out of 4 would be enough to force the prince's hand. Ander was getting excited. This was a classic quest chain. Convincing people was literally his best skill. But before they could plan further, the butler burst in. Royal cavalry from the capital was at the gates. The prince's men had tracked them here already. The Baron did not hesitate. He told the butler to get them out through a secret passage and said he'd handle the soldiers himself. They had to follow the plan. May the ancestors protect them! Ander grabbed Alina and hissed at Sarah and Lydia to move. They disappeared into the manor's hidden corridors. The Baron had bought them time, but the prince was closing in fast. They needed to reach the Wolf family before he caught up. Ander set up an ambush on the road to Wolf territory. Ander knew the prince's men would come after them, so the group picked their ground carefully. Sarah perched high in a tree, invisible against the dark trunk. Alina, Lydia, and Ander hid in bushes beside the trail. Ander had set up the simplest trap imaginable. A rope stretched between 2 trees at horse height, buried under a thin layer of snow. Ander had deliberately left false tracks on the road to make the riders rush without thinking. About 20 cavalry came thundering down the path wearing the prince's colors. Their faces were full of arrogant confidence. Ander gave the signal. Alina yanked the rope taut with her insane strength. Ander wrapped it around a tree to hold it. The front riders hit the tripwire at full gallop. Horses screamed, men flew through the air, bones snapped. 7 or 8 went down instantly, broken necks, trampled by their own panicking horses. Their captain tried to rally the survivors. Sarah put an arrow through his throat before he finished his sentence. Then she started picking off targets from the treetops. Every arrow found a neck, a face, or an armpit gap in armor. Lydia threw a fireball into the remaining cluster. It wasn't powerful enough to kill, but it spooked the horses completely. Riders got bucked off and scattered. Ander activated Inspire, flooding everyone with a boost. Then Ander charged out with his spear and caught a dazed, dismounted rider with a clean thrust through his chest. Alina exploded from the bushes like a berserker demon. She took heads with every swing. The baby bear transformed mid-charge into full-grown mode and swatted a mounted rider and his horse through the air like toys. More than 20 elite cavalry were wiped out in minutes. A rope, a sniper, a mage, a berserker, and a shape-shifting bear had destroyed soldiers who lost all advantage the moment they hit the ground. After the fight, Ander immediately switched to practical mode. Ander sent Alina to loot the bodies. Her scavenging instincts made her perfect for it. She happily collected coins and valuables, presenting them to Ander like a dog bringing back a ball. Sarah and Lydia rounded up 4 war horses that had not fled too far. Ander upgraded his spear and grabbed quality steel arrows for Sarah. Alina swapped her chipped sword for a massive 2-handed greatsword she found. The thing was almost as tall as her. Then came the embarrassing part, actually riding the horses. Lydia mounted hers with royal grace. She'd learned as a child. Sarah intimidated her horse into submission with a cold stare and found her balance naturally. Alina practically bear hugged her horse, clinging to the saddle with a terrified expression. She whispered for it not to drop her. Ander flopped onto his horse like a sack of potato stomach first across the saddle. After a humiliating adjustment, Ander sat upright. Everything felt wrong, legs awkward, back aching, his backside was already sore. Lydia tried teaching him the basics while barely containing her laughter. They set off toward wolf territory, looking ridiculous. Lydia rode elegantly in front. Sarah was steady and alert behind her. Alina was basically lying flat on her horse in survival mode. Ander bounced around like a puppet with cut strings. Teeth gritted, Ander silently begged the handbook to please give him a riding skill. It did not. When Wolf Castle finally appeared on the horizon, Ander almost cried with relief. Days of horseback riding had turned his backside into 2 numb slabs of frozen meat. The handbook eventually took pity on him and granted riding F rank. Ander could stay on the horse without falling off barely. Alina had it even worse. She spent the whole trip hugging her horse's neck like her life depended on it. Face green, ears drooping, tail jammed between her legs. Every time she dismounted, she walked like she'd been beaten up. Sarah naturally rode like she'd been doing it her whole life. Perfect balance, natural rhythm. She kept telling them to use their core muscles while looking at them with undisguised pity. As they approached the castle, a squad of cavalry rode out to meet them. Except they were not riding horses, they were riding giant wolves. The riders were wolf-type beast folk, much bigger and more feral-looking than Alina. Real wolf men with gray fur, jutting snouts, and exposed fangs. This was the famous wolf cavalry of House Wolf. Ander was thrilled and terrified at the same time. Lydia showed her face, and they immediately escorted the group inside with full honors. The castle's interior was the biggest surprise. Outside, it was rugged stone. Inside, these wolf men lived like Victorian gentlemen. The males wore tailored suits, monocles, and top hats. The females wore elegant gowns with perfectly groomed fur. They covered their mouths with furry paws when they laughed. Creatures that could rip a tiger apart were sipping wine and making polite conversation. Ander could not process it. Count Jean Wolf himself was enormous. Silver-furred, radiating power even in his fine black suit. The moment he saw Lydia, he rushed over, hat-off voice full of concern. He'd heard about the capital and already suspected her innocence. Lydia held back tears and told him everything. The slave trade, the king's murder, the frame-up. The count's fur stood on end as he growled with rage. His howl shook the chandeliers. Every wolf man in the hall bared their fangs in response. When Lydia asked him to support a trial by combat, he calmed down and got serious. He warned them about the prince's champion bear crusher Gree. Nobody in the north could beat the half-ogre. Count Wolf said supporting a trial Lydia would lose was the same as watching her die. He could not do that to his best friend's daughter. Ander stepped forward and told him they had what it takes. The Count looked at him with obvious skepticism. He literally called Ander a smooth-faced kid who talks big. Then he made his condition. Prove it. Beat his warriors in a test fight. If they could not handle his people, he'd never let Lydia walk into a death match. Ander looked back at Alina. Her ears were flat with nervousness. Sarah's tail was taut with tension. Then Ander smiled and spread his hands. They would simply show the Count what they could do. Alina and Sarah needed to stretch out. It was time to open some eyes. The Wolf Castle training ground was packed with spectators. Wolf men in fancy suits and gowns had gathered to see them get demolished. Their opponents were Captain Steel Fong and 4 elite wolf warriors. Steel Fong stood nearly 2.5 meters tall and carried a wooden training axe that looked heavier than Ander. Training weapons only, but those thick wooden clubs would still break bones. Ander's side had his wooden shield and spear. Alina dragged a practice greatsword almost as tall as her. Sarah carried a single wooden sword since the wolves did not have rapiers. The crowd was already placing bets. Most thought it would be over in seconds. The referee gave the signal. Steel Fong's squad let out a thunderous war cry and advanced in formation. The frozen ground shook with every step. Everyone expected Ander's team to retreat and play defensive. Instead, Ander filled his lungs and screamed for gold coins. Inspire activated. Power surged through all 3 of them. Then Ander charged straight at their formation with his shield leading. Steel Fong swung his massive axe to smash him aside. But Ander's strength with the Inspire boost caught him completely off guard. His axe bounced off the shield. Ander slammed into their line hard enough to force Steel Fong back 2 steps. Their tight formation cracked open. Now Alina. She exploded through the gap like a cannonball. Her cleaving strike sent the wooden greatsword in a massive arc. One wolf's training axe snapped in half and he went flying. Another got shield and all knocked tumbling across the ground. Steel Fong recovered fast. He abandoned Ander and swung at Alina, but she twisted mid-swing. Alina redirected her blade upward and met his axe head-on. The impact ripped the weapon from his grip. The axe went spinning into the sky. Steel Fong staggered back, stunned. The whole exchange took maybe 5 seconds. The 2 remaining wolves tried to help. Then they felt something cold on the backs of their necks. Sarah had materialized behind them like a ghost. Her wooden sword tip rested on their throats. With real blades, they'd be dead. Silence, then chaos. The wolf men erupted. They worshipped strength above all else, and what they'd just witnessed was undeniable. Their best warriors had been dismantled in moments. Howls of approval shook the castle walls. Count Jean Wolf strode to the center of the field. His amber eyes were bright with surprise and respect. He looked at Lydia and made his declaration. Jean Wolf pledged the full support of House Wolf for Princess Lydia's trial by combat against Prince Ozi, for the late king, for northern justice. Every wolf man howled in unison. The sound carried across the snowy landscape. Lydia's eyes glistened as she bowed deeply. First ally secured. The handbook lit up with a legendary chapter milestone. Howl of Alliance recorded. 2 stat points and a skill point went to Ander. Ander boosted toughness to 15 and upgraded Inspire. Alina's combat instinct hit 90% and she got stronger. Sarah's stealth reached 90% and she got tougher. That night the wolves threw a massive feast. Steel Fong personally toasted Ander. He said he'd lost fair and square and wolves respect power above all else. Ander told him it was pure luck. Then Ander buttered him up until Steel Fong was grinning from ear to fang-filled ear. Looking at the updated stats, their team was becoming genuinely formidable. Ander's toughness was 15, Alina's strength was 16. Sarah's agility was 17, 1 noble house was down. 2 more had to be convinced. Prince Ozis's champion Bear Crusher Gree was still waiting, but for the first time beating him did not feel completely impossible. They left Wolf Castle at dawn. A small escort of wolf cavalry led by Steel Fong accompanied them. Their destination was House Bear's territory to the southeast. Steel Fong warned them that House Eagle, whose daughter was engaged to the prince, would be watching every road. Their specialty was intelligence and surveillance. Count Wolf could not commit too many troops without risking open war between noble houses. Sure enough, Sarah spotted it. A trained hawk circled high above them, way beyond arrow range. An Eagle family spy bird was tracking their every move and reporting back. Ander thought about it like a strategy game. Even with aerial surveillance, information still takes time to travel. The hawk has to fly back or get replaced. There's always a gap. Ander had Sarah watch the bird constantly. When she noticed it being swapped for a fresh one, Ander immediately ordered the group to change direction. They sprinted into dense forest. They bought themselves some time. But everyone knew House Eagle would figure out their destination eventually. That's when Steel Fong stepped up with a bold plan. He and his wolves would take the main road disguised as their group. They would wear Lydia's cloak and draw all the attention. Ander, Alina, Sarah, and Lydia would go on foot through hunting trails, fast and invisible. Lydia protested that it was dangerous for the wolves. Steel Fong just grinned with all his fangs showing. Wolf cavalry did not get caught on open ground. Ander weighed the options and agreed. They needed speed and stealth, not a head-on fight. The group split up. Steel Fong's wolves rode off looking conspicuous. Ander and the others changed into plain traveler clothes, wrapped their weapons, and slipped away on foot. For 2 days they crossed rough winter country. Every mile carried them farther from Wolf Castle and closer to bear territory. Yet the prince's reach still seemed to stretch across every road. Sarah scouted constantly. Alina carried the massive greatsword she'd taken from the royal cavalry. Lydia kept her hood close. The baby bear trotted beside them, occasionally stopping to growl at shadows. Ander tried to stay confident. The political map in his head had become as important as any monster's weak point. House Wolf supported Lydia. The Baron of Frost Wind supported her. But ancient tradition demanded enough great houses to force Prince Oz's into the trial. House Bear was their next chance. Every delay gave Ozis more time to purge the kingdom. Every mistake could expose Lydia. The prince had already murdered his father. He had framed his own sister. He had turned a magical curse into a slave business. Ander no longer doubted what Ozis would do to keep his throne. That was why the team kept moving even when their legs burned. They slept in short shifts. Sarah listened for pursuit. Alina remained close to Lydia whenever Ander rested. The same timid girl who once trembled behind Ander now guarded a princess on the run. The change was almost impossible to believe. Sarah had changed just as much. The starving stray who trusted nobody now risked her life scouting miles ahead for the group. Ander had changed too. He still loved money. He still complained about equipment prices. He still preferred cooking to sword practice. But when enemies threatened his companions, Ander no longer searched for an escape that saved only himself. He searched for the move that brought everyone home. The Adventurer's Handbook had recognized that growth long before Ander did. Every dangerous chapter had pushed the team beyond simple stats. Against the first thugs, Ander had needed a lighter and a bluff. Against the winter wolf, he had needed poison. Against the bear, he learned to trust Alina and Sarah under pressure. Against the ogre, he chose to defend a town he had once planned to abandon. In the frozen palace, the team had killed royal soldiers to protect Lydia. At the capital, Sarah had crossed palace walls alone. Now they were challenging the political structure of an entire kingdom. The stakes had climbed without Ander noticing when the line had been crossed. Somewhere behind them, Prince Ozis controlled the capital. His posters named Lydia a murderer. His men hunted the roads, his allies watched the sky. Somewhere ahead, House Bear waited. Its mining lords might hate Ozis, or they might hand Lydia over for a reward. Ander could not solve that problem with a sword. That was exactly why he intended to reach them. Talking people into things had kept him alive from the first day. He had sold a plastic lighter as a holy artifact. He had turned his strange taste in half-beast girls into evidence during a murder investigation. He had convinced a skeptical baron to trust Lydia. He had made Count Jean Wolfe believe in a team the Count expected to see crushed in seconds. House Bear would be another negotiation. At least that was the plan. Plans had a habit of breaking whenever Ander became confident. 2 days of hard hiking left everyone exhausted. The snow grew deeper as they neared bear territory. Mountains pressed closer. Dark ridges cut the horizon. The road widened near the border. Sarah's ears twitched. Her body stopped before anyone else noticed the danger. Ander saw her expression and raised one hand. Alina froze. Lydia pulled the baby bear closer. Sarah listened. At first, Ander heard only wind. Then the ground began to tremble. Not an earthquake. Hooves, many of them. Ander searched the hills. A flash of silver appeared against the white. Then another, then dozens. Riders burst over a ridge in perfect formation. Their armor was polished. Silver eagle banners snapped above them. The cavalry poured down the hill. They spread left and right before Ander's group could reach the trees. The maneuver was disciplined and fast. Sarah already had an arrow knocked. Alina pulled the massive greatsword free. Lydia stepped backward. The baby bear began growling. Its small body started swelling. Ander counted riders and stopped after the number became ridiculous. Around 100 cavalry, House Eagle had found them. Steel Fong's decoy had not been enough. Either the Eagle family's intelligence network was better than expected, or someone had predicted their real route. Ander shoved Lydia behind him. His shield came forward. Alina moved to one side. Sarah shifted to the other. Their formation happened almost automatically. Months of fighting together had burned it into their bodies. Ander stood in the center. The weakest fighter had become the point around which the others moved. He could feel Alina's presence to his left. Sarah's bowstring tightened to his right. Lydia's magic stirred behind him. The baby bear continued growing. 100 cavalry completely surrounded them. There was no forest close enough to disappear into. No rope trap waited beneath the snow. No wolf cavalry stood nearby. Housebear's border was almost within reach, but almost meant nothing when an army blocked the road. Ander studied the riders. Their horses were controlled, their weapons were ready, yet something felt wrong. They had every advantage. They had numbers, speed, terrain, surprise, but they did not attack. Not one rider lowered a lance. Ander noticed the silence. Alina noticed it too. Her greatsword remained raised, but she did not charge. Sarah's arrow stayed on the string. The baby bear growled loud enough for nearby horses to shift nervously. Still House Eagle held position. That hesitation was the only reason blood had not already covered the snow. Ander forced himself to breathe. Charging would be suicide. Running would invite pursuit. He needed information. Information had saved him during the murder case. It had saved them from the Earth Bear's magic. It had exposed the curse. Now one unexplained detail mattered more than the 100 weapons surrounding them. House Eagle had found Lydia and had not attacked. Ander kept his shield high. His mind moved faster than his body. House Eagle's daughter was engaged to Prince Ozis. By every political calculation, these riders should have been enemies. Ozis wanted Lydia captured or dead. House Eagle knew exactly who they were chasing. The banners made no attempt to hide their identity. The cavalry had surrounded the group openly. Yet the first lance remained upright. That meant the commander wanted something before violence. Ander had survived this world by recognizing value before everyone else. Alina had looked like a starving outcast. Sharp Eye had shown S-rank potential. Sarah had looked like a thief. Ander had seen a ranger and scout. A poisonous mushroom had looked useless. Ander had turned it into a weapon that killed monsters. A cheap lighter had looked ordinary. In the north, it became royal tribute. Maybe House Eagle's silence was another detail everyone would misread. Ander refused to waste it. He stayed between Lydia and the cavalry. Alina's ears flattened, but her hands remained steady. The timid girl from the shack was gone. She had faced wolves, bears, and ogre royal soldiers and House Wolf's best warriors. 100 riders were terrifying. They were not enough to make her hide behind Ander anymore. Sarah looked even colder. Her green eyes moved from helmet to helmet. She was already measuring throats, gaps, and distances. Her stealth could not erase her from an open field. But if fighting began, every arrow would still matter. Lydia stood behind the 3 adventurers who had crossed a kingdom to reach her. She was a princess without a palace, a daughter whose father had been murdered, a sister framed by her own brother. Her wand was gone. Her name had been turned into a crime. But House Wolf had pledged support. Frostwind's Baron had risked himself for her. And the 3 people in front of her had already killed royal soldiers rather than abandon her. Prince Ozis had taken nearly everything. He had not taken her ability to fight back. The Eagle cavalry could see that in the group before them. Ander remembered the handbook's golden page, Crown of Ice and Fire, legendary adventure, kingdom-level storyline, extreme difficulty and risk. The warning had sounded dramatic when the page first appeared. Standing inside a ring of 100 cavalry, Ander finally appreciated how literal it had been. There was no easy quest marker here, no guaranteed ally, no promise that House Bear would listen, no assurance that Count Wolf's support would be enough. Every decision could change the Northern Kingdom. Ander had once measured success by whether he could buy fresh bread. Then success meant warm armor. After that came silver coins, hunting permits, guild ranks, and monster rewards. Now success meant keeping a princess alive long enough to challenge a murderer for a throne. The scale had become absurd. Yet the people beside him made the answer simple. Alina had once shared her last piece of black bread with a stranger dying in the snow. Sarah had trusted him after a lifetime of expecting betrayal. Lydia had placed the future of her kingdom in their hands. Ander tightened his grip on the shield. Silver eagle banners, polished armor completely surrounding them. Ander shoved Lydia behind him. Alina drew her massive greatsword. Sarah already had an arrow knocked. The baby bears started growling and swelling, but they did not attack. Whatever House Eagle intended, Ander and his companions stood together in the snow, armed by every scar, every victory, and every promise that had carried them this far.